Hey guys, what's going on? Laying back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Matchmaker. The Matchmaker is a Saudi Arabian thriller that tells the story of Tarek, an IT technician who's bored of his family and daily routine. One day while heading to work, he has a chance encounter with a beautiful woman working as an intern at the company who he becomes infatuated with. He eventually finds a package left by the intern with a mysterious invitation inside advertising a resort where men can find the women of their dreams. Curious to learn more about the woman he's attracted to, Tarek makes his way to the resort where he slowly realizes he's in danger from the sinister forces at the resort. While I'm happy to see another Saudi Arabian film this year, I'm not entirely sure what to make of this movie. There's a lot of things I like about it, especially parts of its slow pacing and the cultural themes behind it, but the lack of story and characterization leave it feeling hollow. Tarek was strangely portrayed as a protagonist. He's supposed to be bored or frustrated with where he is in his life, but it's never made explicitly clear in what way. The only clue is his reason for going to the resort, which is to follow the woman he encounters, but his relationship with his wife is never explored. There's only one scene in the whole movie where they ever interact before Tarek goes to the resort, which didn't make sense to me. If he's supposed to be following the woman of his dreams, then it would be natural that the story should explore his bond with his wife and why he chooses to leave her, but for whatever reason this never happens, so his motive in driving him forward lacks depth. There is one aspect to his character that hints toward him being obsessive. He has a habit of spying on people and observing situations from afar, which I like in theory, as it could show how controlling he is toward others and how his desires cloud his judgment, but as with the resort motive, it lacks any reasoning or context to explain why he does this. The story as a whole is largely threadbare and doesn't have much setup behind it. All that happens is that Tarek meets the woman, finds the invitation, and goes to the resort where everything else happens from there. It goes through the motions in carrying out its story, which doesn't leave much to be excited about. I do have to say though that there are multiple things that are good about its minimalistic approach to storytelling. Where it's lacking with story and characterization, the movie makes up for it with richly detailed themes surrounding the concept of temptation and how hubris can lead people to their downfall. There's a big power dynamic at play in the movie, in which men's desires for better lives are exploited by women. It can almost be seen as women taking ownership of their lives again after having been oppressed or objectified by men for so long, and it's intriguing to see play out. I'm sure there's a cultural element behind it as well due to it taking place in a more conservative country like Saudi Arabia. There's a mythological quality to the story given through the narrations that emphasize the mystery and culture throughout generations of men and women, and it drew me in to see how things would turn out from a more modern perspective. The movie has this slow burn atmosphere that makes it fascinating to watch at times, especially in the beginning. The dark brooding soundtrack helped immerse me into the story as best as it could, and there's a ton of amazing cinematography with great framing and often filmed in long takes, which allows the atmosphere to soak into a scene even further. After a while though, the slow pacing starts to get old. I kept waiting for the movie to eventually build towards something that would make Tarek stand out more as a character, and it sort of does, but there's no sense of urgency toward anything that happens. I like that the movie takes its time building things and doesn't immediately rush into them, but at a certain point, it becomes a bit much to constantly see Tarek walking and occasionally stalking or talking to someone and then back to walking again. It never feels like he's in any real danger. And even as the movie builds toward the final act and things ramp up, nothing ever feels like it makes much sense from a narrative point of view. Everything from the women operating the resort to the ring that Tarek has to wear feels too vague to wrap up in a cohesive manner, and the way the movie kind of spoils its mystery in the opening sequence adds more disappointment on top of it all. There are other characters in the story to help add variety, but they only add further to the confusion of it all. They all feel just as empty in characterization as Tarek, as they're all there for the same reason he is, just with slightly different motives, which I guess is kind of the point to show how easily people can succumb to their desires, but that doesn't make them any less boring. Now to be fair, as I said before, the movie's slower pacing does help to a certain extent. It allows more time for the audience to digest clues that Tarek encounters at the resort as he's trying to find the woman he adores, as well as to absorb the psychological aspect of it all. The movie looks amazing from an aesthetic point of view, not just from the cinematography, but also from the scenes themselves. Its production design is fantastic, with the cold desert scenery blending beautifully with the more urban architecture of the resort, almost like an oasis, when in fact it's a mirage conjured by dark forces. And for as much as I might dislike how slow it can be, the movie never outstayed its welcome. At just around 80 minutes, the movie's runtime is short enough that it helps to alleviate the pacing issues in the movie so it doesn't drag as much later on, even though it doesn't get rid of said issues. But even taking all this about pacing into consideration, the story itself still leaves a lot to be desired. None of the characters leave much of an impression beyond what the themes of the script require them to do, resulting in some plot threads that lack context, while others are entirely unexplained altogether. It's possible that I'm lacking cultural context as well that would help me better understand what's happening in the movie. There were many times where it almost had me hooked in and intrigued, but the movie failed to develop from there, and the iffy pacing doesn't help with this. The story and themes are there, but everything about them is severely undercooked. Overall, The Matchmaker is an interesting psychological thriller that pays off in some respects, but in others not so much. If you like dramas or thrillers with psychological elements, you want to see one with a more sociological theme, and can tolerate an inconsistent story and pacing, you might enjoy checking this out. I'm hesitant to give this movie a negative rating because it feels like it is trying to go somewhere with what it presents, and it does succeed from an atmospheric point of view, but the incoherent story, bland characters, and slow pacing hurt my enjoyment of it. This movie might not be a good match for me, but I could see it resonating better with others. What did you think about this movie? Were you drawn in by its themes and tension, or did you find it to be boring and confusing? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of The Matchmaker. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the French action thriller, Aka. Bye bye!